My guest today has a long history in our industry. He's the founder of True32 and the author of True32 Flow Manufacturing, which was recently revised, and I encourage you all to get a copy and learn about his mix of lean ideas, theory of constraints, and flow methodologies for efficient and profitable cabinet manufacturing. He's also the man behind Custom Cabinet Planner, Custom Cabinet Estimator, and most recently founded the Good Profit Group, helping cabinet makers help each other with their businesses. We also talk about his new video course on efficiently installing frameless or full access cabinetry. In fact, the listeners of this podcast will get 10% off that video course with the promo code FROST, F-R-O-S-T. And that can be found at true32corporation.com. I'm happy to share my chat with my friend, Mr. Bobbo Buckley.
Bobbo, this is awesome that you're here. I've wanted to do this with you for a while. We've had some chats, but nothing ever over a 30 or 40 minute span. So I would just love to hear kind of the origin story. Take me from when you started in the industry, and you've done a lot of things along the way. So kind of give the listeners too a recap of all of it.
All right. First, thank you for having me on. Thank you for being an advocate for our industry, for
Absolutely.
good design, good engineering, and good business practices in our industry. Not everybody is. And I appreciate that. And I have been able to kind of follow along and see what all you've done in this industry. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
I have literally listed these things out. I've been doing some things like this for years. And so I've kind of documented all the things. So I'll just kind of hit years because I think that's relevant, and I can kind of speak to a few of these a little longer than others, just saying that something happened. But I did have a really short stint in this industry in 1981, and my dad and I didn't see eye to eye, and I moved back to Florida.
I see.
And so I always say I started in 83, but really I moved here in 81. My wife and I moved here in 81. We worked for a little while, and then I just moved back to Florida, stayed about a year, and then came back in January of 83 after we had our first child. Started in this industry in 1983, selling functional hardware and supplies to cabinet makers. So I was on the road all day, every day, out of town every other week, calling on cabinet makers, and loved it and created a lot of friendships over that 7 years. In 86, I started an independent company. So I was an independent sales rep for my dad's company. And then I started my own company, Cornerstone Machinery, and started selling machinery. And shortly after that, got interested pretty quickly in all the machines that it would take to do 32mm stuff. I had several people buying machinery from me, and I was learning from them. I'm selling them machines that I don't even know how to use or how they're supposed to work. I was learning from them. In 87, I signed a sales contract with Cabinet Vision. And so I sold Cabinet Vision from 87 through 90 officially. The contract continued. And so I started my shop in 90. So I kind of did both there for a year or two, however long they let me do that. But I started my shop, my custom cabinetry shop in 1990. It really was just based off of my children were crying when I left on Monday mornings on those weeks out of town. And so they were old enough to notice me leaving. Made that decision, started the cabinet shop in 1990. I manufactured traditional face frame cabinetry. That's the equipment. Even though I was selling machinery, that's what I knew I could afford and pay cash for. And so from 90 to 96, I manufactured face frame cabinetry with a well-equipped shop, but I knew that I didn't have the funds to do what I needed to do to full access initially. And in 1996, I switched to what we all have commonly referred to as frameless. And since then, I've done everything I can to drive away from that to full access. And here lately, this frame zero idea that kind of developed through some designers that we were working with.
Can I pause you right there for a second and ask you why the big switch away from that? What does the term frameless do to people as you talked or in their brain? Why do you want to get away from it?
It gives that just your natural first. If you've never heard it before, your first thought is, well, I'm getting less than I would have gotten And you are,
I mean,
but it's a good
in a
lab.
way, in a good less, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why we've really gravitated toward this Frame Zero thing. It's like all of these soda drinks, or instead of saying, that it's a diet drink, we're saying it just doesn't have sugar in it. It doesn't have the frame on it. So that's the objective there, really and truly. And that Frame Zero worked well for that, but there's some value in SEO and all the other things and owning the terms. And we kind of owned the full access term for a good while. When if you Google, even today, if you Google full access, you're going to see a lot of True32 stuff pop up. But Frame Zero, I think we're really going to own that. If you Google that, you're going to see all the Good Profit Group guys, the True32 guys. We really want to own that territory, but we'll never own Frameless. That'll never happen. And so that's kind of the driving energy behind that.
Yep, makes sense.
In 98, I was one of 4 cabinet makers that founded the Cabinet Makers Association, served as its first treasurer. I say that just to say that I am an advocate for, and I will say that over and over again today, for community. Just what we did this past weekend, that community. Nick and I both ran into each other at an open house event that Jeff Bellows put on. So those are the kind of things that really can elevate a cabinet shop. Maybe not to the same level that Chick-fil-A has elevated itself above the rest of the fast food industries, but you really can elevate yourself when you sit with other cabinet makers that do what you do. So
absolutely. I think those conversations at open houses like that are almost more valuable than any class, you just pull so much away from it. So I'm with you on that.
They do what you do. They walk in your shoes every day. And so I have always tried to create as many opportunities as possible. And I'll mention several of those through this. 99, we co-founded True32 Corporation with Mark Poole, with our objective being to create products, services, whatever, that would help cabinet makers that want to make that transition from face frame to full access. And then help the full access guys be more successful with it, because there's a lot of false starts. There's a lot of failed starts. And so we really wanted to help with that. So True32 Corporation was founded for that reason. I was already writing the book, so we founded it just before I published the book, so we would have a company. And True32 Corporation is listed as a publishing company. That's what the corporation is listed as. In 99, we also published the first edition of True32 Flow Manufacturing. That was created a publishing company, then published the book that I had been working on for about a year and a half, I believe, somewhere in that range. 2000, we released the first copy of Business Partner Estimating Software. Today, that's called Custom Cabinet Estimator. We've kind of gravitated toward that custom cabinet things. Multiple things are named that now. 2000 also, we launched the True32 University, offering week-long True32 training workshops. Did that for 13 years. A lot of people ask me why I stopped. When I could bring people into my plant and show them what right looked like, I felt a lot more comfortable than going to their shop and trying to tell them what right looked like. And so I just really didn't want to do that anymore. We also, or Mark Poole specifically, he and I both switched from Cabinet Vision to KCD in 2000. That's when we both moved design softwares and started working on what would become the True32 library for KCD.
Yep.
Which you may
was that
already
the
know.
big reason for that switch? Was so you could design that library? Was that the driving force?
Yeah, we had been trying to work with Cabinet Vision to do the same thing, and they just were, they were a little bit cooperative, but not really cooperative. But this is old history, so a lot of people wouldn't know this. But some guy had written a thing to make it easier to do reports using crystal reports, and when Cabinet Vision did one of their updates, they just blocked him out. So sharecropping is always dangerous, but we decided we didn't want to follow that path, and
so KCD was just much more open to the idea.
I felt like that was a heavenly subtraction for us.
Yeah, I got you.
It worked out better.
Yeah, that's good.
But I have we have Good Profit Group members that use Cabinet Vision. I have lots of friends that use Cabinet Vision, and people that I sold Cabinet Vision to. I had lunch on the way to that meeting with a guy that I sold Cabinet Vision to in 86 or 7. So I love Cabinet Vision, but we made that decision so that we could do that library within it, that it lives inside of it. And that went well for years and years and years. And then in 2000, Mark developed what we call True32 Report Center. Probably this past weekend is the first time you'd ever heard of that. And you probably will never see it other than you might see it in the menu structure of KCD if you're ever using KCD. But Report Center was our hub. It allowed KCD to talk to CAD code and to, at the time, OrderLink, which was Conestoga's, what's today called, I don't know if they call it Connex or Connex. I'm not sure how they want us to pronounce it.
But it's their order portal system, right?
It is an awesome system, excellent system. I've loved it from day one, and I think I told you in that last meeting why I really prefer it. Their error checking, whatever you want to call that, was ahead of everybody else, and it's still better than everybody else.
Somewhat real time error checking, right? As you enter orders or design things.
But even at that, once you get to, I actually did an order with a friend yesterday here in Murfreesboro, and we were completely done, and we always cross our fingers and make fun about, is it going to go? And it didn't. And we were using a door we'd never used, and basically it had, it's those reeded doors, and you can't have a panel over 24-inch. So like false fronts, wide drawer fronts wouldn't work. So we had to go figure out all that stuff. So, but most of the things are real time. I prefer real time. That's what we did at Cabinotch when I was there, was try to make it as real time as possible. Not you place the order and it says, nah, you can't do that. But in the end, ultimately, there will be things it catches. And I've always appreciated that it does this yellow-red thing. Yellow, you probably shouldn't do it.
Yep.
And red, you can't do it.
Yep.
A lot of them are just, you can't do it.
And you find that out early relative to filling out everything and finding out at the end, right?
A lot of things, when you answer a question, that answers other questions. So it basically pre-populates for you if there's only so many options. It doesn't always get rid of everything that potentially could be wrong. So you're still having to kind of know what you can choose in places. But it's an excellent program. We loved it. And we wrote our own hub to be able to communicate with, at that time, OrderLink, and to be able to communicate with KCD backwards and forwards. We could go either way with those two. And then CAD code. CAD code was our post-processor of choice. Now Cabinotch owns both KCD and CAD code. So it's a perfect storm for something really good to happen.
Full circle, yeah.
2001, I developed the website that became True32.com. I've since sold that. Back in 2012, I sold that. But in 2001, I developed that, and we started selling, for lack of being able to buy through distribution the things we needed. It was really hard to get suspension systems. It was really hard to get leg levelers. It was really hard to get edge banding in all the colors that we would like to have in reasonable quantities and all of those things. So we started True32.com. It is still a thing today. Danny Castle runs it in Richmond, Kentucky. 2002, commissioned the CNC Motion machine, our first CNC router. We sold 12 of those over a couple years time. That router, I guess some of the things that were unique about it at the time, mine was the prototype. We took one of their standard machines and said, add pop-up pins. Today, every router has pop-up pins, but routers didn't.
That was not a standard thing back then?
No.
I see.
We had them do a drop-down push-off, nothing elaborate like you see today where the machine's really long. We were just still taking this 4x8 machine and going to push off onto an independent table, but we actually used the gantry and had a drop-down arm that pushed your parts off so you could go ahead and load the next sheet and work from there. We had the tool racks. They were stationary in their world, and we said we want those to drop when they're not being used, so we can load from the back. So it became a pass-through machine. You could load the sheet from the back, offload the front, and then somebody could be loading on the back while someone else was dealing with the parts on the front. So we, kind of ahead at that point. And then we took the WinCNC interface and rewrote it so that instead of just having all the options you normally have, it was a menu of this is what you do first, and this is what you do second. But once you launched it, when it finished one, it started two for you.
I see.
Each macro, each time you finished one thing, it would start the next thing or get ready for you to execute the next thing. So
I see.
I think that was unique.
Yep.
In the end, the ultimate thing that we were trying to achieve was that if somebody purchased KCD, the True32 library for KCD, our WinCNC machine, that literally the day, and we did it over and over and over again, 12 times. You machined parts for kitchens, not test parts. You machined parts day one.
Yep.
When
You
the
were
machine was live, you started machining parts.
sellable parts on day one.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Day one.
Yep.
So, and we achieved that. From that, don't really have that in my list of things that we achieved, but we actually sold parts to each other. You know, guys that had CNC routers bought parts from somebody else with a CNC router. The guys that didn't have CNC routers bought parts from the guys
Yep.
with CNC routers.
So it kind
And
of de
even
facto outsourcing business kind of got created at the same time as this. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, I even ordered parts myself just because I sold more than I can do. And so at that point, it made sense to, even though I had my own CNC router and was machining parts for other people, I was outsourcing my parts so I could get 120, 130,000 in a month rather than my typical 80 or 90,000
Right.
dollars.
Yep.
So again, I think we were kind of ahead of the game at that point. In 2002, Mark initiated almost all of this, and I don't know how familiar you are with Mark Poole, but he and I were partners for 10 years in True32 Corporation. And Mark really instigated the majority of the work with CAD code, and then kind of brought KCD into that, where we could, and I was just asking for things and he was making it happen. But we didn't need labels. We were writing on the parts.
I see.
So we even toyed with the idea of a Sharpie, but we couldn't figure out how to cap it. So we were writing with the 5mm bit. We're using the 5mm through bore drill bit, so it's a D point, and we would write with it, and then we would drill all the 5mm holes with it. And so that was kind of unique. We came up with an 8mm nesting bit, but we had that nesting bit, the down shear came all the way down to within 4mm of the bottom, so we could cut 1/4 inch or 3/4 inch material, chip free both sides.
Yep.
Later on, and it was the most expensive bit that was available because we had to have it custom made. Nobody had an 8mm bit, but it allowed us to groove for the back with the same bit, and it allowed us to nest and do multiple things with that bit.
Yep.
We
just became the multi-purpose workhorse, basically.
Yes, it did the vast majority of the work. And as soon as coatings became available, we jumped on that.
Yep.
I don't know. Danny may still sell it. I sold it up until I sold the business to him. I don't know if he still sells it or not. But
Interesting.
It was an on-screw bit.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And then we developed, well, in 2008, everybody knows what happened in 2008. Some people would say it happened in 2007. For me, it was 2008. 2007 was the best year I ever had. But for some of our True32 guys, well, California specifically, 2007 was equally rough for them. So, but you know what happened there? My sales dropped by 2/3. So I sold 1/3 of what I had sold in 2007 in 2008. The mantra changed. The phone calls changed. Everybody that called me up until 2008 called and said, how can I build more cabinets and how can I build them faster?
I see.
2008, everybody called and said, how can I sell more cabinets? I'm like, we really hadn't thought about that. So in 2008, the latter part of 2008, I developed the first True32 website. So I host a bunch of websites, cabinet maker websites. That first website was an HTML, CSS website. I created a template and I would just duplicate it and put it up, put your name on it, and then put another guy's name on it and put it up. I still host one of those HTML sites that he just will not update.
And that was just to get more eyeballs for these customers, right? To start to drive some traffic and help sell.
SEO wasn't really a thing quite yet. I mean, it was, but it wasn't you weren't going to get a whole lot for whatever you invested in doing it at that point in time. We also want, organic links to websites is valuable. So all of our websites are linked together. Every one of them it's like a locations page. And so they all are linked to each other. That was one of our driving forces. Another is just who's going to, come up with some good pictures. I provided them with pictures and then you replaced them as you had time. You didn't start with an empty website or a bunch of cruddy pictures. They were all decent pictures or really good pictures. So, and nobody wanted to learn how to do it. I can't tell you how many training sessions I did of here's how you edit your website. Everybody wanted to edit their website. I would teach them. And of course, back then, HTML website, you had to buy software to be able to do it because you were editing static pages. Mm-hmm. And maybe 2 people out of all of them actually ever edited their website. And a few would call me a year later and say, I forgot everything you told me and I want to edit the website.
Yeah.
So they just ended up.
And I'm sure they asked you if you can just do it. Is that what a lot of it turned into? Yeah.
People still pay me to just go ahead and edit it when they need it. In 2012, I sold True32.com to Danny Castle in Richmond, Kentucky. Also retired, or called it retirement at that time. Today I look back on it and call it sabbatical.
Yeah.
But I was just frustrated with the government. You know that story, and we don't even want to get me started because my veins will start popping out. So we'll just say that I retired in 2012, a happy retiree for a minute. And I found out pretty quickly that just busy is not the same thing as meaningful work, and that meaningful work is just air and water. For me, I got to have it. By 2013, just out of sheer boredom, I created the second generation of the websites and started moving people from the HTML sites to a WordPress site. All but one are WordPress that haven't been on the third generation that I've created recently. 2016 was a big flagship year for me. That's when Cabinotch called. Actually, 2015, I took an IT job with a printing company locally. A friend of mine had known him for years, built the cabinets in his house years and years earlier, but did all their websites and managed the technical, the equipment, the rack, and working on computers every day. A printing shop has a lot of computers, and set up the networks. They'd lost their server, and they were literally emailing everything. But spent a year doing that. But in 2016 is when Cabinotch called. Mike Lee was the director at the time. Philip had just left. He sold it to them, but he stayed and worked for a while, and then he had just left. And that was probably the most fun I had in a 3.5-year span.
Yeah.
That was just a blast.
Well, tell us more about that period of time. Like, what were you working on, and what can you share about that period?
So the objective was to repurpose that True32 library for KCD to become their full access library. And that was kind of my insistence that we're not going to call it Frameless. We're going to call it full access. They still and I built their website. It's still there, the old one. The everything but US is still the old website I built for them. What they called the sales website. I'm not sure why they haven't shut that down yet, because they launched this one months ago, the new one. That is the store, and it does both. But for a long time, you had the store and the website that I built. But I did the engineering. All of the full access cabinets came from that library, and then we made it all work. Cadman Campbell at Cabinotch was an integral part of making all of the back end parts of it work. And I spent several weeks at KCD working on, we couldn't do the whole lot. We couldn't just take my library and plop it in there. The way that we had done that, what we always called it was off reservation. Our library was our library, and KCD didn't support it at all. If you called them and said, "Hey, I got the True32 library and something's not working right," they said, "Call them."
Yep.
That's not what Cabinotch wanted. Cabinotch didn't own it then, but they wanted to be on reservation. They wanted KCD to support.
Full support. Oh, yep.
And so I started in November of 2016, and we launched in April 2017 with what was called at the time Phase 1. And that's as far, even though I was there for 3.5 years, we never got to Phase 2.
I see.
The KCD was in what they were calling, we're getting ready to do this next update. We want to get that done, and then we'll start working on your stuff. And that just drug out. So it just never happened. Still hoping to work on that. Once I left Cabinotch, they called probably the next year. I left in 2020. In 2021 is when we did the online, what's in their website now. You order one cabinet at a time. I worked with them and Matter Smith on that, engineering that. And that is full featured. It's awesome.
It is awesome.
Except that you have to enter each cabinet. With KCD, you draw your job, and your order is the byproduct of that job. So it was, even traveling, everything about it. Traveling with the salesman, I loved that. Doing the engineering, building the website, whatever I didn't care. Just tell me what you want me to do. Everything involves a cabinet, and everything involves a cabinet maker. So just tell me what you want me to do.
Pretty much all of those things were right up your alley. So that's awesome.
It was a dream job for sure. Yep. And they paid me.
Yeah.
And if they'd not offered me money, I probably would have took it.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit last Friday about parts of that, but the choice to use LaMelo Tenso for a lot of that construction. Can you talk about that part and how that came to be?
So it predated me. They'd already gone through that process. They looked at Ovo, Lockdowel, and the Tenso, and obviously Fasten Link, which was Phillips fastener. So that was all done. But Mike Lee did say, "Hey, are you okay with this? Here's what we did. Take a look at this. The two things that he kind of threw out there, he said, we'd really like to use a 3/4 inch back. True32 was not using a 3/4 inch back at that
Okay.
time.
Yep.
And we would like, and we've already kind of settled on this Tenso machine. We've already ordered a machine. We don't have it yet, but we've ordered a machine. If we had to, we would do something different if you just say this is a non-starter. But it really didn't take me but a week or so to say, man, I don't know how you could have done any better. And then once I traveled with a salesman, it's more valuable to somebody trying to show that cabinet than it is somebody trying to build that cabinet. It is just an incredible fastener. And as I told you at the meeting this week, the lateral play, just having that little bit of lateral play, still a firm fitting, but having a little bit of lateral play so you can always get that face lined up.
Yep. That front to back play is huge.
Yep. There's just too many variables,
Do you
even
know
on
what,
a fancy router.
Do you know technically what the distance is? Is it like plus or minus 2 or 3 millimeters or something? Two?
It's probably 1.5 each way. I know you can go a full 3. Now it's rolling when you're doing it. I've got one here.
Yeah.
On my desk, but it's actually doing this when you're doing that.
I
It's
see.
So it's no longer flat when you do it, but you've got a good 1.5, maybe even 2 millimeters in either direction.
That's
so
huge. That's huge.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things about it that you can take it back apart. That now there is a preload clip. I don't have one of those, but they show it on their website. Most everybody's seen them if they're buying from Cabinotch. But the preload clip does make it easier for somebody that's just starting and they need to do like an oven cabinet that has a top and a couple fixed shelves and a bottom, and each of those have 4 fasteners. It helps to have the preload clip to just pretty.
So does Cabinotch send that clip with every order, or is that something you have to add on?
But I don't know if they still do.
I see. Okay.
Once you've done it a little while, you know what it feels like, and you know when not to push and when to push. And so nobody that's skilled with it ever uses a preload. They're not going to take the time. But everybody that's new, it's just beneficial to go ahead and load it. Just a regular wall cabinet, even a base cabinet with a couple rails, it's still, you can do it. You don't really need the preload. But if you got a bunch of full shelves, fixed shelves and tops and bottoms, it's probably, even if you're good, it's probably better to go ahead and use the preload. But it is just the whole thing. I mean, we're using it for light rail now. We didn't do that for years, but the guys are just in the field machine. That's a whole lot more comfortable to take that machine and machine that slot in the bottom and then machine it in the rail than it is to get, that's just a hard.
Absolutely.
Once the wall cabinets are up and you're trying to add a concealed light rail, the light rail that lives under the cabinet and the doors come down and cover it, it's an awkward position to get into. And the LaMelos, of course, what everybody's doing. You've got your Nic Frost filler, but a lot of guys are doing that same type of approach with LaMelos now. And so, and I even heard, I wasn't aware of what Grant was doing or what Mosaic has done, and that they're actually giving you the little targets to position them, so you're not having to fool with some sort of spacer or jig or something.
Yep, those 5 millimeter spacer holes or pre-alignment holes are pretty amazing.
Brilliant. It's brilliant. Yep. And again, I wouldn't have known about that if I didn't go to that meeting. I didn't know.
It's brilliant on LaMelo's part, right? To have the ability to pre-align that, the Zeta P2 with those 5 millimeter holes is genius. It's a huge add for sure.
Well, I'm a fan. All of the guys in the Good Profit group are fans. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't have a Zeta machine. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't use it. Several guys have a Domino and they hardly ever use it anymore.
Yeah. There's certainly uses for it, but man, you hear it all the time about the Zeta. Everyone says, why didn't I do it sooner? And everyone also says, man, I just find ways almost every job to use it. So shout out to LaMelo on that one. It's definitely been
they
game
nailed
changer.
It.
Yep.
So 2020, I founded Good Profit Group. I was done at Cabinotch. And so, the idea, we had done these True32 trainings for a number of years, 13 years really. And I hadn't done anything for a few years at that point, but the community thing is that important to me. And so I was actually talking to a friend who was a C12 member. I don't know if you've heard of C12. Most people have heard of it, but it's a Christian organization, 12 representing the 12 disciples and C being Christian. But it's business owners. They're all business owners. They pay a significant amount of money to be a member, and they meet once a month for a whole day. It's something like, a restaurant that has a private room, or at a country club. They meet in a private room, never more than 12 people in the room. They're all different businesses. And I was playing with the idea of doing that. And I even went to a meeting with a friend of mine, and the guy that owned that print company is the one that told me about C12. He was in it. But ultimately, when I really started getting serious and talking to them, they said, well, you can only have one cabinet maker in each group, and you can only have 3 groups. I'm like, well, that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really want to do that then. And so I thought, well, I'll just start my own C12 that is just cabinet makers. And so that's what Good Profit Group is. It's a peer advisory meet. We actually meet weekly. We started out with a whole day once a month, and we have, moved it several times to make it more convenient for everybody. So now it's 2.5 hours
I see.
every Tuesday. Well, it's 2.5 hours the first and third Tuesday of every month, and it's a formal meeting, and there's a topic and still some chatter. And then every other week, the second and fourth week, it is shop talk. Just they talk about whatever they want to, and there's no set time. Sometimes we go for an hour and a half, but no more than 2.
And is this primarily business focused and helping grow business and solving problems and that sort of thing?
Everybody's a cabinet maker. I haven't said that everybody has to be a cabinet maker. I've actually used language that said, if you were a heat and air guy, we wouldn't say no.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing what we do, I think my litmus test is if you manufacture something and there is a sequence of events that has dependent events, you can join this group. But, not reaching out to any of those people. But I wanted to leave that open in case in the future somebody else wanted to pursue that path.
How many Good Profit Group members are there?
Right now, there's 12 or 13. We had 20 at one time. As we've had attrition, I haven't done anything to replace those guys. I'm just really enjoying the group and the freedom. With 2 groups, it was a little more working that I want to do at this stage of my life. And so I didn't do anything to kind of replace them. And the new format, if we bring in new members now, it's not going to require more of my time. There'll just be more people in the meeting. We found that, if you have 20 members, really and truly, a meeting's only going to have 12 or 13 people. Not everybody's going to be there every week. They just can't. That's not possible with installation schedules and sales meeting and all those things. So I'm confident now that we could take more members and not have that second group. I don't want the second group. I definitely don't want a third group. I knew within weeks of starting it that I didn't want to throw a third group. That's what C12 does that. I don't know how they do that because I also have a one-on-one with every single member that's in the peer advisory group every month.
Yeah.
So that's a significant
That's a huge commitment. That's a lot of time for sure.
2020 also off. I did that in 2020. That was much earlier than that. I call it Custom Cabinet Planner. That's when I started calling it. No, I call it 22. We called it World Domination Custom Cabinetry app.
Yeah.
For a really humble name that we called it that for a long time, but it was something I had worked on for myself starting all the way back to, I remember Chris mentioned Trello. I started with Asana when I came off the intranet. So having a server, I loved having an intranet when we had a server. True32 Corporation. And so the True32 Custom Cabinetry had the advantage of that. So we did all the kind of things you would do in Trello or Monday.com or all that on our intranet. We couldn't access it in the field, but in the plant, everybody could get eyes on the same thing easily. But I started with Asana, and then Trello came up with the Kanban boards. And so I jumped ship, went to Trello. And then within a year, Asana added Kanban boards, and I jumped ship, went back. And then Airtable came along with formulas. So I jumped to, so this custom cabinet, what is now Custom Cabinet Planner, has moved from all these things. And initially it was for me and my company. But in 2020, I started selling it to people, and it was Airtable at that point. So I guess that's true. 2020 is when I launched that, but I launched it as an Airtable app. And then I moved it to Notion when Notion became I had this whole list of showstoppers. I can't move because, and they were missing some key pieces that Airtable had for a long time. But at some point I said, even though that's a showstopper, I'm still moving because this Lego building block thing is brilliant. So Custom Cabinet Planner is project management is the best way I can describe it. And it is lean, and theory constraints is built in. You don't really have to know or understand lean so much, or the Kanban boards are there. If you want to create Kanban inventory, it's just there. You just do it. I will say that I'm probably the only person in the world that is offended by laminated graffiti. If somebody's serious about lean, I just walk in and go, I can't, this is like everything's tattooed. There's tattoos everywhere. Every door, every wall, everything's just got graffiti, laminated graffiti all over it. And I don't know why that bothers me, but in a digital world, I don't understand why it continues to be that way.
Yeah.
Why would you want to go to the trouble to print it and laminate it when you could just live in the digital space? Everybody's got a computer in their pocket,
Yeah,
and most
that's a
have a
good point.
tablet.
Yep, that's a good point.
So custom cabinet planner is built around you using it paperless, that you
I see.
don't print it, you don't laminate it, you use everything, the Kanbans, everything. You can print one, but most people just print a barcode and that's it.
Well, let me ask you 2 follow-ups on that. Like, first of all, where do people find custom cabinet planner? And secondly, is there a size of shop? Is there, like, who is the ideal candidate to potentially use a product like that?
I have shops that are using it that are much bigger than I ever got. And that custom cabinet estimator is kind of the same way. And I just, I'm honest about that, guys. That's not my gig. I hope I accommodated you, but I may not have accommodated you. I did, move custom cabinet planner or estimator, the estimating software, to the cloud a couple years ago, and make that offering available because the larger companies, the desktop version didn't work well for them. And so the cloud version works great for them. Custom Cabinet Planner is cloud-based because it's Notion-based. It's a template. I'm not selling them a piece of software. I'm selling them a template. It is intended for them to make into their own, that they built their logo into it. When they invite a client into it, it's got their logo. It doesn't say Custom Cabinet Planner. It says their cabinet shop name. It has their logo in it.
I see.
And they can change anything they want about it. If you were to go look at what I provided Aaron Two's company in Crestview, Florida. He's just north of Destin. Almost everybody goes to Destin, but they never heard of Crestview. But if you go to Destin from the north going down, you probably went almost to Crestview. You're just a mile away from it when you take the back roads to get to Destin. But his key employee, Diana, she runs the office, and I don't know that I could use his copy of Custom Cabinet Planner. She's changed it so much.
I see.
I probably would be lost. And that's the intent. That's my intent. But most people, when they invite me into it to either train them on something or help them with something or help them with a formula or a code, it still looks like they've changed some words here and there, but they don't change the structure. She's changed the structure.
Yep.
She's made it work for her company. And that was my intent, that everybody would do that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's available. I mean, I have a website for the products. Most of the products, their own website, but all the websites link back to True32Corporation.com. Everything links back to, and every website in the footer has the logo for every other website. But there is a website for True32 Custom Cabinetry. There's a website for for Custom Cabinet Planner, Custom Cabinet Estimator, True32 Flow Manufacturing, which is the book. True32 Corporation is the web store.
True32Corporation.com gets everybody at least to find those links and everything.
Everything's linked in the footer to all the websites. SEO plays better than just having a product on a web store. If it has its own website, it plays better with SEO. At least it did in the past, and I think it will continue for a while longer. I think the days of hashtags meaning anything are pretty much gone.
Which is fine by me.
Me too. More graffiti.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's just a couple of the things here. 2023 developed the 3rd generation of the website. So it's Odoo based, and I am a fan of Odoo, but I am not, other than the website, I'm not encouraging cabinet makers. My business is run off Odoo. It is my accounting package. It is my e-commerce. It's brilliant program. But if you're trying to move your accounting package, it was a 6-month process for me.
Jeez.
And you can pay somebody to do it, but most cabinet makers are not really equipped to even provide the information needed to do it. So it's a big leap to go from, I would venture to guess that probably 98% of cabinet makers, maybe 95 to 98% of cabinet makers totally made that number up. But it's a well-informed number because I know a lot of cabinet makers. And they're all
yes, you do.
I have a few cabinet makers that I know that are using Xero or something else, Peachtree, whatever, but almost everybody is using QuickBooks. And I moved from QuickBooks, but I'm not encouraging, and I've been to multiple Odoo events. I love everything about it. I love using it for e-commerce. Nobody even comes close. Nobody comes close to what they're doing. But our new websites are based on Odoo. So the new True32, the third generation of websites are based on that. Moved a lot of the guys from WordPress to that. And then in 2024, as you know, because you helped me a lot when I did that, published the new revised edition of True32 Flow Manufacturing, and my best sales day was the day you paid your post.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. That's awesome. Do you tell me about that? What made you want to do a revised version of that book?
Shame, absolute shame.
Really? Just looking back on it for
No. One guy, he was like, I bought this book and it doesn't say anything about CNC. And I'm like, well, duh. Did you look at when it was published?
1999.
But, it's like, I either need to pull it down or rewrite it. I can't really on Amazon say, hey, don't buy this book if you're interested in CNC in any effective way. Nobody reads anything anymore. So just because I put it on there and say, by the way, there's no CNC in here, doesn't mean they won't buy it and be disappointed.
So it was just really CNC technology and how far the industry has come since then that made you want to revisit it.
I mean, once I started, all the things I covered, but the impetus was to get something in there about CNC. We were starting, we published in 1999 and I had my CNC in the building in 2002. So we were just a few years behind that. When it was published, Mark Poole already had an Onsrud router in his plant.
I see.
Or not I think I'm saying that wrong. It wasn't Onsrud. Northwood.
Okay.
Router.
Yeah.
So we had some experience. He had a lot more experience than I did at that point. But I tagged along before he bought the Northwood. We went to Thurmwood and spent a whole day, maybe 2 days. I don't remember. It was a significant amount of time. We went to the show and, it was a long drawn out process for him, but the objective long-term, in rewriting the book was to add that one piece, and then everything else just kind of flowed as I was writing. And I do think so many things have changed. That's why one of the reasons I sent you that this morning, there's a piece of this that I really would like to talk about, of what's changed.
Oh yeah.
That's a piece that I'd really like to talk.
Yeah, no,
this year I'm, and I have saved this. 2024 was the book being republished, and then 2025, this year, put off since 2019. I've been working on this, not continually by any stretch of the imagination, but since 2019. The Friday before we were supposed to do this, before it got postponed, I finished the True32 Frame Zero installation course. It is a video course, almost 7 hours of video, of how to install full access Frame Zero, frameless cabinetry. If somebody was installing IKEA cabinets, it would help. It's not about IKEA cabinets, but and why so many people struggle, especially a guy that was just making face frame cabinets, and what he wants is a cabinet without a frame on it and call it frameless, and then wonders why it's hard to install.
Right.
So that's what this course is all about. And so I'm announcing it here on Nic Frost's podcast.
Well, this is awesome.
Now it is just a product on the website. There's not a website specific to it, but because it's a course. But yeah, True32 Frame Zero installation course is live. It's on the website. It's been there for a couple weeks now.
That's awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, I have not watched it yet. I intend to, but I think that is going to be a really valuable resource, because I'll tell you, as people get into frameless, Frame Zero, from my perspective, when I've been around those transitions, the thing that eats people alive almost immediately is the install. They just totally don't see a lot of it coming. A lot of the tips and tricks to do it well, they spend days on site that they didn't plan for the first time around, or and so I'm excited to check that out, and I hope a lot of people do too, because I think that's a really valuable thing that honestly I'm not aware of really any great resources for that focus on install only of that cabinet type out there. So I think that's awesome.
Well, the one thing that really fights us a lot in this piece of it is, first, there's the big companies that tried it and backed away. And they didn't use leg levelers. They didn't use a suspension system. And the installer said, I hate it. I don't want to install it.
Which honestly is a common first response, right? You're not used to it. I mean, look at anything in life. The first time you do something, you're not good at it. I mean,
Right.
I mean, yeah.
And that's my thing. They do the installer does need to be brave enough to, even if he uses legs and suspension system, he's got to be brave enough to suck at it for a minute. You know, you've been installing face frame cabinets your whole life. Your dad taught you, your grandfather taught you, whatever. You're not going to be as good at this on day one. You do have to give it a minute. But if you know the fundamentals, you're not going to struggle. You're going to struggle if you don't know. If you don't know, I can't just screw this to the wall that's not plumb level and the floor that's not level or flat. You've got to bridge all those things. And that's what suspension systems and leg levelers are for, is to bridge the crap, because we need it to be level and plumb everywhere at all times.
Do you think leg levelers are still the thing that you see in some frameless shops that you just wonder, or they're not using leg levelers and you just like, how are we still doing frameless without this product? Would you say that's the thing that stands out to you the most? How some still build frame zero cabinetry?
Well, you know, we had to, in the Cabinotch world, we had to offer it with the toe notched, frameless cabinet from Cabinotch is offered with a toe notch, and the wall cabinets are offered without the suspension system.
What was the driving force behind that choice?
People above
I see.
above me.
I see.
I did, I had a vote, but it was just one vote. So, and I think that they can justify that in sales, but I do think that long term, I think it's a short-sighted thing in that these people are getting it and getting frustrated. So they're ordering, but then maybe you're never going to hear from them again.
I see.
And I don't know how many people are like me. If I get a bad meal, I'm not saying a word most of the time. I'm just not coming back. And so I think that might be a piece of the puzzle, is that just people try
that's a
it
good
and they don't
point.
like
I
it.
didn't think about that while I asked that question, but you're right. I mean, like we were just saying, when people use leg levers for the first time, they're not used to it. And the initial feeling is a little bit of frustration while you get used to it. And I could see that from a Cabinotch customer the first time having a poor experience because you're not used to it and not coming back. So I understand that.
This course was a Cabinotch initiative. I was working for them during the filming, and then that ended. And so I still had all the footage. I'm like, well, I talk about Cabinotch all through it. I mean, I'm proud to do that.
Yeah.
I believe that Cabinotch is going to be a game changer in our industry, or continue to be a game changer in industry, in the sense that I don't even think people recognize the technology and the benefit. I mean, people are doing it, and none of us are grateful enough for what we have available to us. Again, that's why I want to kind of talk about what we didn't have when I was starting in the business. But when you place an order using the online order system from Cabinotch, if you order full access cabinets, a diagonal corner cabinet has a different hinge and a different plate. A blind corner cabinet has a different hinge and a different plate. And you might, you're going to need so many legs and so many sockets, and you're going to need so many suspension blocks. Now, the one thing it can't calculate, because it doesn't know, is suspension rail. But if you put all those cabinets in the cart, it will say you need this many legs, and you don't have to buy a full box. You can buy the legs that you need, the sockets that you need, the clips that you need, the suspension blocks that you need, and the right hinge and the right hinge plate for every application: negative angle, diagonal, blind, all the standard hinges. It's just going to come to you. You don't need a Kanban for it. You don't even need a box to keep them in. You get what you need. And I think that, between Cadman and, I mean, I'm sure Philip played a part in that. Mike Lee played a part in that. Cadman played a part in that. I presume Jad played a part in that. That's the brilliance. It's not that it's cabinets. It's that you can get everything. I know Thermwood tried to do something like that years and years ago. It just didn't work out for them. But probably just because they were too early, not because it was wrong or bad or anything like that. Probably just, they were just.
Well, I think
too,
just Philip and Cadman in general, like some of the smartest guys I've met yet in this industry. And so, I think any idea those guys would have come up with was going to work. That's.
Well, and the technology wasn't there when they started. I mean, they've had to really work toward that, and it's better today than it was 6 months ago. But it's a lot better than it was a few years ago, and it will continue to get better. And that's what I'm really hoping and praying for, is that KCD comes to that same level. Now that they own it, there's really no reason for it not to. So, I guess to kind of sum up all of that stuff, year to year thing, is that you can tell from that I went from one good thing to another. I mean, people ask me all the time, do you regret getting out of the cabinet business? Do you regret selling True32.com? Do you regret, selling Business Partner at one point in time? And I'm like, no, everything I did was, I just went from one good thing to the next. And I pretty much have summed up everything that I've done in talking to you so far. So
Well,
that was
I
pretty
feel the
much
same way. I
everything
mean,
that I've done.
I think it's okay to pivot and do different things and keep, that's good.
Well, I feel like you have. I mean, you're not as
Oh yeah.
mosaic focused as you were.
No, I've maybe touched it 10 times in the last year. Like I was in it every day for years, and now I joke all the time, just a dumb tool salesman now. I don't know anything about stuff like that anymore. But
But you're
I
happy
wanted
for the pivot. It's from one good thing to another.
100%. I feel that way from going from a chemistry professor to a cabinet shop owner to a mosaic independent consultant to owning a tool company. All of those pivots have been the right thing to do at that time. And kind of like you just, you know, you make it what it needs to be. You get the good out of it. You help as many people as you can. And all of that stuff just falls into place. You've got a lot of history. What's something recent that you've come across maybe that's either changed your perspective on a thought you had in the past, or just kind of some helpful things in the modern frameless world that we're in today?
In reverse order, only 2 items that I think are just phenomenal things that have come up and can change a cabinet maker's business life if they'll let them. I will say, first off, that Profit First is a brilliant book. I love Profit First as a book.
Mm-hmm.
Mike McAllowicz has offended me in every way you can offend somebody. He's just a coarse man. But the book, the math is brilliant. And I think I've always done it. I just never articulated it like he said.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote estimating software. We had the conversation last week about, and actually you were talking to someone else and I was just listening in, but you're saying, you shouldn't price your product by what it costs you, but the market will bear. And I agree that we need to price it by what the market will bear, but I think the price needs to be based on what it costs us, so that if a trash pullout goes from $250 to $253, I can go change one thing and I've been fair to me and I've been fair to them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they get a quote from me and it says, hey, your pull-out shelves are $832 for your pantry, if they say, I can't afford that, take it out, it takes out $832. It doesn't take out $900 or $700. It takes out exactly what it is. So custom cabinet estimators, basically, what does it cost? And then your markups are, you push those
Right
to wherever you can.
And those are what are based on market value.
Yes.
Yes.
And so all of your labor rates and all of those things should be, so that at some point now you do know what it cost you, but then you're marking it up, not just exactly what you think you want. You're marking it up. So Profit First is basically saying that instead of saying we're going to take these sales and subtract from those cost of sales, and then what's left over is profit, they're saying, no, we're going to subtract the profit and say the overheads just got to be what's left.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of subordinating profit as the last number, that it is what's left, you're subordinating, you just got to control your overhead. And when people start thinking that way, it's not even hard. But they don't go buy dually trucks just because they like it.
I love that so much.
They think twice about it. So, and in Custom Cabinet Planner, what we did was we built that in. And so we treat those numbers that are, Mike McAllowicz would call one thing and throughput accounting would call another thing. Throughput is what they would call it. The cost of sales, that's not your money. It's the vendor's money and your employee's money.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're basically escrowing that money. We're saying we're going to put that 50% deposit there, and we're not going to spend it on anything other than those things. And it's just a brilliant process. That's not his process. And then I don't kind of subscribe to the 6, 7, 8 bank accounts. We just do that virtually. I mean, that's what software is for. We just have envelopes.
Mm-hmm.
Digital virtual envelopes to represent those accounts. Now, if you're really, and I think that's who he's speaking to, the people that are just not disciplined enough to not just rob money from virtual envelopes
Yep.
just like they would.
That's a big part of it because, you know, when money gets a little tight, it's very easy to break that system, right? If it's accessible, if it's easily accessible. So I get the idea.
Well, that's probably the in reverse order. That's the most frequent one or the one that most frequent or closest to today that I've discovered that I think is just life-changing for a business person to understand profit first. I've read the other books, and I'd say Mike McCullough's, he just uses language in his books that he doesn't have to use.
Yep.
And his audiobooks. So and then the low investment, low overhead business model is the second thing. Again, it's been around since Cabinotch's inception, and really and truly it's been around for years and years and years. But if we look at and we talk about what I didn't have available to me when I started in the cabinet business, that's one of those things. You know, when I started, doors, and when I was selling to cabinet makers, you couldn't even buy doors. As a matter of fact, why would you? They were pieces of MDF, veneered MDF that you routed a groove into. Everybody could do that. You could do that with nothing but a router. So everybody could build their own doors, and it didn't take any time at all. So we didn't need CNCs for that. We had the wing jig.
The wing jig.
Gave you the provincial groove. You know, just there were options on it. So, but to be able to, and I take this from different points. So this low investment, low overhead business model is not just for the guy that says, I want to do extreme outsourcing. I don't want a big shop and I don't want a bunch of industrial equipment. I don't want to invest a whole bunch of money, but I know how to build cabinets. I know how to install cabinets. I want to design and engineer and sell and assemble. And, you know, those are the things I want to do. You know what a CNC costs, you know what a edge bander costs. And those things, it's almost like they need to have a big old sign flying over them and say, wait, have a compressor.
Oh yeah. The full,
you didn't have to have before. You got to have all those.
The full
and
infrastructure,
guess what? You
for sure.
Don't have an hour in your building. Low investment, low overhead business perspective, but also for the guys that do want that, this is a path to pay for it, borrow for it. I can earn the money buying cabinet parts from Cabinotch or from Conestoga or from Decorative Specialties, and then buying doors and drawer fronts for those guys. It's a path to pay cash for that CNC router or that edge bander or any of those things.
Just to inject that was my small cabinet shop life. I mean, I was buying cabinet box parts from a local Minnesota company called Buyer Interior Woods, using Ray Howe's cabinet door order program for, you know, modern nice faces. And I mean, that's what allowed me to grow pretty quickly with my small business before I bought a CNC. So that's literally like to a T exactly the path. And I'm fully with you on that. You do not have to invest in everything right away.
Absolutely. Those are the two things that have really, again, in reverse order, really give you the opportunity to do things you couldn't do in the past. I love everything about the extreme outsourcing model. If I were going to start over again, and I have been asked that question, that's what I would do. Mm-hmm. Primarily because the machinery lives in dog years.
It does. Mm-hmm.
That's, you know, I guess I nailed it. I moved into it. We sold 12 machines. I used my machine. I sold my machine for a very good price, mm-hmm. Because it was in excellent shape, and I had gotten it because we were the dealer.
Right. Yeah.
So I had gotten it and it's still running today. You know, Michael Glasser's company, Chris Harmon sold it to him. I sold it to Chris Harmon. Chris Harmon sold it to Michael Glasser. Michael Glasser is still using it today.
How many of those are running today? Do you know?
There's only 3 that I can't account for, so the rest are running, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And even those 3 may be running. I just don't know where they are. But one of them I know is not. Well, I don't even know that because the last time I talked to him, and I've talked to him recently. He got the new website, but I didn't ask him about it. But he said I'm going to sell it, and he wasn't using it, so I don't know if he sold it and the guy got it running. It just had a little simple problem. It's really probably one issue that the CNT Motion router had that is just phenomenal that could even be this is the keyboard. So if the keyboard's bad, it drifts. Really? I mean, the keyboard's basically sending it messages to go places. You know, if you can transit the router on the gantry with the arrow keys, if that's not working right, it can transfer. And so everybody that was having what they were calling gremlins, these mystery problems, just replaced the keyboard. It was good. But Danny never heard that until later. So I don't know what the outcome was with his. I don't know if his is working somewhere else or it's still sitting at his place. I don't know. And he's not interested in getting it running again. So
what would you say if a young cabinet maker was going to start, and let's say they were going to start with this low overhead idea, what are some things to avoid? What have you seen go wrong? What how would you advise them to go down this road if they were starting from scratch?
Well, I think that there's Jeff Bellows really stated it well in y'all's podcast. That was
don't give him too much credit.
Yeah, the one you did with Jason and him.
Yeah, I know.
It's like for some people, outsourcing will never work because he said, "I want to make the cut list the day that they need the parts." You can't do that in an outsourced world. You got to be ahead of the game all the time. I loved Conestoga for a whole lot of reasons. But one that was unique to them in a lot of ways is that you could say, "Hey, here's my order, and don't ship it until till this date."
I see.
I know your lead time is 14 days or 21 days or whatever it is, but I was doing that all the time, like 3 months out, saying, here's my order, ship it on this date. And they would do that. Cabinotch won't do that. And for good reason. I mean, the Conestoga does it is amazing. I love it that they do it.
I'm sure. I mean, the logistics is already hard. To add that into it has to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. But most people are just not wired like that. They just can't do that. And Jeff's point, that's probably the biggest detriment to anybody that wants to go to extreme outsourcing. Now, if they're just starting out, that's probably makes more sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've been doing it the other way and you're like, somebody comes to your office on Monday and says, "Hey, we need the doors tomorrow," and you do it tomorrow morning, ordering those doors 2 to 3 to 4 weeks beforehand, especially if you're doing pre-finished. And I did a lot of pre-finished. Once I really understood theory constraints, that was the easiest thing I ever did. It's not been that easy since, but that first one, the first constraint being the finish room, was easy. Full access didn't break it, but it elevated it tremendously because no cabinet ever went to the finish room again. Now, some parts of cabinets did, but no cabinet went into that finish room again after that.
These are all flat parts now at this point, right?
All flat and no cabinet. Typically, all the cabinets, again, when we get to the part where we're talking about what we didn't have, pre-finished plywood was one of those things.
I was going to say,
there's a whole bunch of things that we didn't have back then.
Right. Well, I was going to say to your point about, kind of the planning ahead aspect of outsourcing. I think you make a good point. It's kind of where you come from, right? Like we'll take Jeff, for example, right? He's always just built his own stuff, right? And that's just always been the case. And so to change that habit to then go to outsourcing is a big change. But if you're starting fresh, it's not that big of a change, right? Because you're learning everything anyways. And so you can kind of just, if I need to order doors, I need to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks ahead, whatever it is. And that's just the way you start. And I think it's a lot easier to understand and get into that. But I can see, like, from Jeff's perspective, changing that is hard, right? Because that has been pervasive for 20 years of him doing it, right? So I'll still get him on board, but it's just going to take a little while.
There's also in the absence of something like Conestoga's order system, if you're having to type all those things in, I think Chris mentioned in yesterday's podcast, that they figured out now that they can export CSV. I presume he's dealing with somebody with Almoxy, probably. That's what it sounded like. He didn't say that, but I think that.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure. I should have asked him. I don't know where his doors are coming from.
Well, we do that frequently. Multiple Good Profit Group members are buying from Modern Fronts, Ken Allender in Knoxville, Tennessee, or buying from Premier Eurocase, or somebody that has Almoxy. And, the thing about Almoxy is you do have to make that CSV specific to that vendor. It's not just, they all have Almoxy. You export into this format, it will work. It doesn't, because they allow you to name the fields anything you want.
Yep.
But they also allow you to map it. So you just got to understand what you're doing. We've documented every bit of that in Custom Cabinet Planner, every step of the way.
Nice.
I think that's probably the biggest, the biggest hurdle for most people to get over is that it is hard focused work to order doors, drawer fronts, especially when you're doing pre-finished, and all the cabinet parts. Now, Cabinotch makes the cabinet parts really easy. If you've drawn the job, it's there. Now, when you go to the online order system, you are looking at your drawings and typing those numbers in again, and you're apt to type a number in wrong. But whatever you've put in there, if you've drawn it right, it's going to be right. There's still the selections. That was one of the big things that Cadman was it's like, we really need this many questions? I only have 3 for face frame cabinets.
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, we really need this many, and we need to double it. If you're going to offer leg levelers, you got to have the question, and then what are the alternatives to leg levelers? If you're saying you want to do this toe notch thing, and you maybe want the legs but not the toe kick, or you maybe do want the toe kick, and if you do want the toe kick, do you want it machined for the clip? All those things. A lot more questions with that, and that is overwhelming to a lot of people. One of the things that I have spent a lot of time on in the last year with Custom Cabinet Planner is making my help screens contextual. Instead of just saying, here's a course, learn how to use Custom Cabinet Planner and then go use it, I'm saying as you're using it, when you come up to this, you click on this button, you'll say, this is what you're doing right now and how to do that.
Yep.
That's one of the hardest. You've done it, and every one of us have done it. Even if it's a YouTube to fix our car. I only want the answer to one question, but I got to watch an hour-long YouTube to try to find the answer
Sift
to that
through
question.
40 minutes to find your 10-second nugget. Yep.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
But it's ordering things from other people. There's a lot of people's order systems are really, really bad. It's just a spreadsheet and they make you do it.
Yep.
Or they're literally wanting you to fax something like, do you really still have one?
Yep.
Yeah, that's something my buddy Connor, shout out to Connor for that. He's helping people with stuff like that on the back end. And man, it's, I've kind of been away from ordering for 5 or 6 years now, but it's like nothing's changed, right? I go back and it's like the same way it was in 2018, 2017. It's like nothing's been modernized at all with that. So I'm glad to see that, except Cabinotch and El Moxie and some of these others. But I just mean like in general, like some door and drawer guys and stuff, it's just so old school still. And it's like, man, so much opportunity.
Metric.
Yeah.
A ton of them.
Right. That's true. I know.
Yep.
It's simple.
How hard is that?
Simple conversion. Just make it happen. Yep. All right. I got a good one for you. Obviously, as we've talked about today, you've been, basically since 1981 or 83, I guess, in this industry nonstop. If you could go back to the 80s, knowing what you know today, what would you do different? What path do you think you would have taken? How do you think things would have been different with what you know today?
Well, the list that I've made is basically saying, what would I do? What would I tell my younger self? So I think that's the same question, sort of.
Yeah, basically a version of it.
And it also touches on things that I've said in the book. So if somebody's read that, this is going to be a repeat. But what I would tell my younger self is to, number one, and I'm just anti-debt all the way around. So operate at the speed of cash flow. Just don't outrun your cash. If you need to do this outsourcing model first, do that. Man, you can do, it's with Cabinotch, you can order any cabinet size you want. You're not compromising your design.
Mm-hmm.
You could order what you need and what you want. You're not having to say, well, I can only do this. You're able to order what you need. So operate at the speed of cash. Don't go it alone. This community thing is like top shelf. You don't do it alone. The Facebook groups are doing a great job. That's kind of the newest method. But, when we go step back far enough, it was woodworking forums. WoodWeb was one of the early ones. We had one. We had a True32 forum probably up to about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It just got overwhelmed by spam. It was an old system. Danny had to shut it down. But, woodworking forums, Cabinet Makers Association, Good Profit Group, whatever. Be in community. Don't ever don't ever go to a woodworking show alone, ever.
Mm-hmm.
Walk the show with people, have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with cabinet makers, and go to the show. It's the best antidote to burnout, period. There's lots of vendors that aren't going to go to AWFS this year. And I've had multiple people say, why are we going? I'm like, because we're not going to see the machines, the big machines. We bypass those booths anyway.
That's right.
We're not going to go in there and look at a big plant that makes sheet goods. We don't care about that stuff. We're there to sharpen each other as iron sharpens iron. So do community, figure out your community. some people will say, whether they're referring to the Facebook groups or even a group like Good Profit Group, this virtual stuff, what you and I are doing right now is not as good as face-to-face. And I'll agree. I'll agree that
I'll agree with that too.
Yeah, it's not as good as face-to-face. It's 10 times better than nothing.
Of course.
As a matter of fact, virtual is 1,000 times better than nothing.
Absolutely.
But maybe face-to-face is 10 times better than virtual. But
I would agree with that. And that's why
1,000 times better than nothing.
Events like Jeff's and AWFS and all of these things, like, they're so important to be at, whether you think you have something to go there for or not. I'm in 100% agreement with you on that.
And when you walk the show with other people, you will miss things.
Oh, yeah.
But they won't miss it.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times when we were walking as a group of 4 or 5 or 6 and somebody says, look at that. And I'm like, I was getting ready to walk right by that. You just don't see it. So create a culture of documentation. Again, that's my custom cabinet planner thing. Just whatever you got to do. Of course, Brad Carnes is doing a great job there too. Gemma Docs is doing a great job there. Create a culture of documentation. Everybody should know what everybody knows. Everything should have a single source of truth. Everything should live in one place. Pursue one-piece flow. I don't know that as many people will resonate with that one as well as I do. I actually did run my shop in a true one. Like, we built 8 cabinets a day and we installed 8 cabinets a day. Very few people want to go to that level, but batches of, 8 times 5, just don't do the huge batch thing. I mean, it's so self-evident. If you got $1 million job, you're not going to build it all at once. But when it comes down to a $25,000 job and your weekly sales are 10,000, you need to take that 25,000 down to 10. Figure it out, break it up. So pursue one-piece flow as far as you can. Harder to do in a face frame environment, much harder to do in a face frame environment. Avoid debt, almost a repeat of the first one, operated fast cash flow. So reinforcing, avoid debt, avoid multitasking. I don't know, I probably am more anti-multitasking than anybody else I don't think we're physically capable of doing it. We're just task switching. Do you even remember a thing? You may not have been born yet. You are right between my 2 daughters. One's 2 years younger than you, and one's 2 years older.
1985.
My son.
1985. Yes.
So, OS2, does that mean anything to you? So IBM came out with OS2. We were all using the first generation of Windows at the time, 3.0, and IBM, to strike back against them from kind of stealing the DOS thing from them, came out with OS2. OS2 was called a multitasking environment. We're all so used to it now, we don't think anything of it. But when you have 2 tabs open, we couldn't do that on an early PC. There were no 2 tabs open.
Interesting.
You opened one thing and you closed it before you opened something else up. OS2 changed that for us. But you weren't. You still had to go to the other tab. You weren't doing 2 things. You just had 2 things open.
Yeah. I've never actually thought about the multitasking thing. That's a really interesting comment.
It's all bad. Every bit of it's bad.
We're just task switching. We're not actually multitasking.
Yes. And if you're task switching and doing that quickly, you're doing both poorly. You're not doing either one well. So
interesting.
All multitasking is bad.
God, that's a story of my days right now. It feels like sometimes.
Well, I mean, it is a discipline like anything else. Whatever it is, you make that decision. I do not multitask. And I think Chris said, and I resonated with it immediately when he said yesterday, when I'm with the client, you can call me all you want. I'm not answering. I believe that is etiquette. I believe that's courteous. I believe that's the right thing to do. I'm having a conversation with you. I'm not going to take a text or a phone call from someone else. And that's multitasking. The most frustrating client meeting I ever had, I won't name any names, but it was a friend of ours from church who was a realtor, and both the husband and the wife were realtor. We had 3 meetings and I never got 2 minutes with them.
Yep.
They were constantly texting,
answering phone calls.
I never really got to have any time with them. And I finally just told them, I said, y'all come write everything down. I'm not going to meet with you anymore. Just write down. You stay here however long you got to stay, but I can't get in a word edgewise. So multitasking is bad from every other. The next one is, identify, exploit, subordinate, elevate the constraint. So the 5 steps of theory constraints. And then learn to love whatever you're doing. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody talk about that, or there's been any books written about that, but it's kind of been a life mission for me. If I'm painting the parking lot stripes in a parking lot, I'm going to find a way to make that interesting, whether it's racing myself, whether it's trying to find a better way to make the line straight, or whatever it is. Learn to love whatever you're doing. My most recent failure in that was DaVinci Resolve. Are you familiar with DaVinci Resolve? Have you ever used AutoCAD?
Yeah, I mean, very rudimentarily, yes.
So AutoCAD and DaVinci Resolve are like twin softwares from different mothers.
Okay.
There are 3,000 file menus, and each one of those 3,000 file menus have 3,000 file menus under them, and all those file menus have 3,000 flyouts under them. And then there's hidden menus that you right-click on it to find another list of things. And I really struggled with DaVinci Resolve creating this installation course. I am a ninja with Camtasia, for screen capture. I can do anything with screen capture, but DaVinci Resolve was the hardest thing for me to learn to love. And the love actually came with AI. So I don't know that we'll talk about that today, but I've watched, just like we talked about earlier, YouTube after YouTube. There's tons of YouTube for DaVinci Resolve. It's an open source software for producing videos. It's free at a certain level, subsidized by Blackmagic's equipment. And I just fought it, watched all these videos, and literally I asked AI, why is it, I got 2 cameras. Why is it giving me 23 cameras? And it said, oh, well, you just need to go to this field and right click on this field, and then you'll see some, there's nothing. No, not one video mentioned that. I couldn't find anything that said, you go to this field, right click at the heading, and this whole, it was that long.
Yep.
But I want to see the camera, and now this is 1, and this is 2, and this is 1, this is 2, and this is 2.
Well, I think that's a topic we'll have to do another episode, because I do want to dive into AI related topics, and I know you've always stayed up on tech and things, especially when it pertains to this industry. So I think we should do another one and really dive
We're
deep
deep diving
there.
into AI right now.
Yeah.
Yesterday's meeting, we spent probably an hour and a half talking about literally True32. If you use the words True32, you are talking about me. You're either talking about me, Mark Poole, Keith Hill. Those are the 3 principles. Now, there's lots of True32 guys, and some of the shops besides mine were named True32 Custom Cabinetry. But if you Google it, you're not going to find anything but us. But if you used AI, at least yesterday, day before yesterday, I'll read this to you just so you can, let me see if I can find that, because I think this is interesting. So here's my prompt. Let me go back to the first one. I just think this is interesting. Don't want to dive deep into this. What does the True32 system say about flow? Okay, that's not a tough question.
Yep.
The True32 custom cabinetry system, developed by Brad Carnes.
Interesting.
A name we know.
Yeah. Hey, Brad.
But he didn't develop it. And I'm saying, okay. And it's got this really long thing about this is all the things Brad did. He didn't develop the True32 system. So I come back next one and say, Brad Carnes did not develop the True32 custom cabinetry system. Can you try again and rectify that misinformation? You are absolutely right. Thank you for that correction. The True32 custom cabinetry system was originally developed by Dennis M. Leifering.
Who's Dennis?
Same data, all over again, almost the same. So I go back and say, Dennis Leifering did not develop the True32 custom cabinetry system. So can you try that again? You are absolutely right again, and thank you for your patience. The True32 custom cabinetry system was developed by Randy Hayes. I have no idea who Randy Hayes.
All right. 0 for 3 so
the
far.
The Leifering guy's a German, so he had some little relationship to the cabinet makers. So finally, on the 4th time, corrected again, Randy Hayes did not develop the True32 custom cabinetry system, so can you try again? Apologies for the earlier inaccuracies. The True32 custom cabinetry system was developed by Bob Buckley, also known as Bobbo Buckley. And then it goes and lists all that stuff. That's pretty bad.
4th time's a charm, though, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yep.
And since then, 2 Good Profit Group members have sent me other things.
I see.
That are equally as bad. So I'm an advocate for it. Again, it solved my DaVinci Resolve problem. but there's places that it makes sense and places that it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I think that'll be a good one. I'm curious if you get a few months under your belt diving into that AI world more, and then we should do a follow-up. I'd love to hear what you learned.
We've been doing it since it first became available. Almost every member has all of them, the apps. And when we do our meetings, I'll ask them, here's my prompt, you put it in, let's see what we get.
Yeah. Interesting.
So we've been diving deep for a good while. I will say that at least on biblical topics, Grok 3 is ahead of the others. I'm finding less misinformation and deeper dives, and I trust it more than all the others at this point.
Interesting.
On the cabinet side, I'm not fine. Now, if you got to do code, certainly Claude and ChatGPT are really good if you want it to write code for you, whether that's CSS, HTML, or literally, Visual Basic, whatever. It can do the user-created standards in Cabinet Vision. It can do the Visual Basic for
really.
KCD,
It can write UCSs.
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
It's brilliant. So
some
of them are better than other things. Llama was the worst, but now Meta AI has stepped up to whatever that shift was. I know there's still a Llama, but their Meta AI is more like the others. Llama was, every time we prompted it, would be the worst answer of all, and usually the shortest, not distilled in short, just crappy.
I see. Short. Interesting. Well, nice. This was awesome, Bobbo. I think we should wrap this one up here, and I think we should kind of use this as a leaping off point for our next one. If people want to find you and the things you do, True32corporation.com has the links to pretty much everything. I think that installation series, I'm very curious to hear how that goes and kind of the response to that, but I hope that people check that out.
Link to it. Again, it's 7 hours, so I don't expect you to listen to the whole thing, but I'm going to send you a link to it, and I'm also going to give you a code for anybody that you send to it that they'll get 10% off of it.
Well, good. And you okay if I post that in the group? And
absolutely.
And drives. Yeah. Good. I hope people use it.
It's probably just going to be Nic, but I might have some kind of suffix on it, but I'm going to create a discount code so that anybody that does that, because I know that some people are going to, I think they'll buy it just because you recommend it. And I want them
I hope
to have
so. I only want to recommend the things that I know are going to help people. And that's, for years now, I've seen that as a big, it's one of the hardest things as people get into Frameless to tackle is the install. You can wrap your head around the boxes and all of the things and how the pieces go together, but that's the thing that bites people. And so that's great. Well, thanks, man. Really enjoyed it. We'll do it again soon.
Me too. Thank you.
Good seeing you, man.
All right. Good to see you.